My name's Nathan Mathias, and for my AP research study, I'm working on basically the modernization of prosthetics. So basically, I'm going to dig deep into how they've been developed over the years from past designs to future designs, but I also want to bring my own twist to it later in my slideshow, and I'll show as I dig deep into a second part of my own research question, which I think you guys will find interesting. But before I even get into that part, I want to give some background, basically what I'm doing. So basically, prosthetics are their designs, they're artificial devices used like these pictures. You can use them for limbs, for the arms, and for legs. And they're very important to the future of medical technology, and I think there's a lot of promise between what we can get from them. So basically, definition by Health Direct of Australia, prosthetics are artificial replacements for missing body parts that happen due to accidents, amputations, or birth defects. And they're an important part of the body part if you do lose it, and it helps with these patients when they do lose limbs. I wanted to talk a lot about different types of prosthetics, but I will be focusing on mainly just the arm, but there are several different other prosthetics like the ankle, you can get the lower knee, and there's also different prosthetics like you can get prosthetic hairs or prosthetic eyes. And I feel like because of that, medical technology has become so vast, and there's a lot of room for improvement and innovation. So basically, from the National Institute of Health, I just want to give some more information on prosthetics. The market has increased by so much over the years, and it's expected to increase up until the next decade. So, like this graph, you can see how, starting from 2022, the amount in billions of dollars has increased by almost like 60%. And because of that, that means that a lot more people are starting to need prosthetics. And from the World Health Organization says 35 to 40 million people in 2017 required prosthetics. So that doesn't even account for people that have them, but people that need them. And also taking into account that 80% of the population doesn't have access because of low income. Because of that low income, we can't actually track who really needs them. So there's almost a disparity. We can't tell how many we need. And in the U.S., we have about 70% of people with 1.7 million needing below the knee prosthetics. So basically, my research question is, how have these prosthetics been designed over the years? How can they differ from the past prototypes, present prototypes, and future prototypes? So obviously, this is my main research question, but I am going to diverge to my second part later on in my slides. But I'm going to use this research so I can develop for that next part. So with past prototypes, they started very primitive. They all used very low, very easy to come materials such as wood, acrylic, metal, leather, rubber, and it was like I said, very primitive, and it offered very less function for the person. So like Ambroise Paré did in the 16th century, he was able to create the first design of a prosthetic, and pretty interestingly, he created very similar to what future was going to be like later on the line, now presently. And how William Robert Grossman did it in the mid-19th century, he created the first prosthetic according to the National Institute of Health. He was able to make it out of wood and aluminum, and he was the first person to fully make the first prototype design. So, compared to past prototypes, present prototypes are finally starting to make kind of set the stage. But now we're finally advancing into newer materials. We're getting into stronger nerve control, brain control, and 3D printing has made a big difference in how prosthetics have changed over time. So like in this picture, we see how they went from the original primitive materials such as wood and rubber to now being bioplastics made by 3D printing. And same with just the materials, but the structures have also changed. Now they have more function just by having less material. But part of the reason why present prototypes have gotten so much better is because now patients can incentivize what they want for their prosthetic. They can ask for a one more inclined for physical activity, one more inclined for what they're trying to do. And I think that's why we've gotten innovative more over time. Compared to past and present prototypes, future prototypes have a lot of future as well. And we are starting to finally see a big jump in our prototypes. And like these pictures, we see almost like a Iron Man, Darth Vader hand-looking prototype. And very much in the future, so many years, we could see it coming down the line where these prototypes have so much more function than we expected. And like in this picture, adding a whole finger using the prosthetic could be the next big thing. But I'd say the main part of the advancements for the future are that brain-controlled prosthetics are becoming more predominant. By having such a stronger nerve control, it makes the loss of that limb substitute not so great. So by losing that limb and having such good brain control, it's able to kind of substitute easily. And by Open Bionics, they are kind of the ones that started the idea of the hero arm, which is kind of the next future of the prosthetic. So the main idea from the reason why present prototypes are kind of getting where they are is 3D printing has taken over and been the main focal point of prosthetics. Meaning that it's become so cheap, and the ability to produce it and get the printer has been more widely accessible for many people across the country. In a few years down the line, we could see people in their own homes having 3D printers, and prosthetics become so much more prevalent. And a lot of it says some information by John Miller Schwartz. He said that 3D printers could be almost less than $200 a few years down the line, and being so cheap, it will help it to produce better. So in this graph, it's pretty similar to the other one, but I like the layout it's showing, and it kind of shows the difference between myoelectric prosthetics and MPC prosthetics. So myoelectric prosthetics are kind of usually ones more designed for high range, they're technological, and they're more for the function that they're offering, while MPC prosthetics are more for the durability, and they're more robust, and they provide more structure that the patient is trying to have. So I feel like since the robotic market's increasing by so much, having that option for patients is why the market's also increasing. But as you can see, they're both increasing by so much because there's so much a demand for both of them. People desire both types. So, but every year it's increasing by so much more, and the economy is being impacted by prosthetic amount by almost by 8.8%. The U.S. market is expected from 2023 to 2030 expected to change. So compared to all the other prosthetics I was talking about, sports prosthetics are a little different. They're easily compared to other brain-controlled and nerve-controlled prosthetics. These are not controlled by other factors. They're built mainly for physical activity, so they're flimsy, but they're able to withstand such like activity. But you won't be able to control it besides its prior function. So that's why you mainly only see it in foot designs like this one. But it also suffices when you only need it for one leg. So that's why I'm gonna dig deep into maybe the possibility for one in hands, but we're gonna see why it is mainly only foot designs. So last aspect is the prosthetic glove I want to talk about. Basically, it's more of a newer idea. Even though it was created in the 1960s, it's not changed much, and it provides mainly an aesthetic side to your prosthetic, but it gives the patient a more human feeling for the prosthetic that you wouldn't get without it. And with Purdue, they said they were able to do a lot of advancements on it. As you can see in this picture, it completely looks like a human hand, and it provides the patient with more than what their prosthetic just gave them. So I think there's a lot of innovation for it. So basically, my methodology now. So back to my research question, I was talking a lot about how prosthetics have changed over time, and I wanted to use that research so I can talk about how I wanted to design my own prosthetic using CAD, which is computer aided design. I wanted to make sure it was cost effective, it was able to withstand physical activity, which is obviously no contact, and it can fit and work with a prosthetic glove. So by keeping all these requirements, I was building a gap for myself where this research would basically have a bigger impact, and this design I made would stand out from other ones with so many requirements I made. So, and I wanted it to be a challenge for myself, so I could see like a future benefit from it. So when designing this CAD, I used the engineering process, and I struggled a lot with the beginning parts of it. I had a lot of trial and errors. I started and restarted, and it came a long time, but I knew my requirement plans I was trying to do, and I made sure to brainstorm, and I created the design by CAD, and this is what I want to show you what it is. So this is what I made. I designed it so it was used for physical activity using the Onshape program. I wanted to basically section it in 4 parts, and I'm going to kind of explain to you my purpose and what I wanted to do with each part, because I really designed it with a big plan that I wanted for it. So with the first section, basically I wanted, since it was mainly for physical activity, I wanted to increase the hand size as well. So by making the fingers longer, it can increase grip, increase strength, and the hinges are more prevalent for physical capabilities. The fingers would also be rounded, so it was more like a real human hand, and it would provide more hand function for the person rather than like these pictures I put on the top, which are actual sports prosthetics that have been used from nowadays. Since sports prosthetics are mainly for hands, I kind of wanted to challenge myself and do it for a hand because it's mainly only feet. And obviously these prosthetics haven't been highly innovative, so I wanted to take up the challenge of doing that. So the second part of my design was the forearm. I was trying to increase the size of it so it could support the rest of the prosthetic and would junction the hand portion to my joint portion. So by sweeping those edges of the prosthetic, it would help protect the joint and would help protect the hinges from any damage or dirtiness. With my elbow joint, I wanted to go for a different idea that I haven't seen, and I wanted to test it, but I think it's an interesting idea. By using the elbow ball joint, I believe it will help with physical activity and will help with movement, make it more smoother by keeping in 90-degree angles. You can keep normal human function, but it would also be smoother and be able to use easily. So I didn't really want to dig deep too far in this because I wasn't able to do a lot of research on it, but prosthetics kind of work when they are nerve controlled psychologically. It goes through a prosthesis controller, which I'm going to place in my other area of my prosthetic, which I'll get to in a second. But this part was very difficult for me because I wasn't able to implement it myself, so I was just doing it by CAD, but I thought it was very interesting to add to my presentation. So my fourth section of my prosthetic was basically my upper arm. It's supposed to be the heaviest part, and it's supposed to be where I keep the main data for my prosthetic, where the code's supposed to be located, and it's supposed to connect with the rest of the arm. So by having that as my top part, both the structure of the prosthetic would be good, and it would be able to hold everything well with the hinges and support everything well. So back to my engineering design, I was able to use that full process to get with my prosthetic, and I properly used my prerequisites to keep it cost effective, keep it physical activity, and use a prosthetic glove. So by using that, these sweeped edges, the prosthetic glove will fit, and by using less amounts of material in the ball joint, I can save amounts and keep it cost effective while having it be very functional and a good prototype. So materials I wanted to use were, for the prosthetic glove, were polyvinyl chloride, which is a very commonly used material for gloves. It is, however, not a very common one because silicones usually use more for the hand gloves. But I found this was a little bit cheaper than silicone. So since I wanted to keep in my requirements, what I had to use. But I find it's a very lightweight and durable material. It does easily get stained. But I feel like that is a good material that would suffice what I was trying to go for. And for the prosthetic arm, I wanted to go with light curable elastomers and carbon fiber reinforced filament, which were basically bioplastics used from the 3D printing. So this is the cheapest option for prosthetics, and just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's not a very structurally good material. It's widely used in most of them. It does not have the full polymer composition, which does lower the amount of durability it has. But I feel like to keep the price down and kind of still get the job I wanted to do, I think it still will keep it within budget and kind of make up for what I lost from the prosthetic glove. But yeah. So some limitations I had with this project were I didn't have access to other CAD programs, and I mean I had access to them. It's just I wasn't very good with the other ones, so I wanted to stick with Onshape. Even though it is more of a beginner CAD program, I feel like it was the best option for me. I had a bit of a time constraint with the prosthetic. I spent a long time on designing it, so for 3D printing wasn't my idea, but I had to kind of change my idea towards the end. And I wanted to also expand a little bit more on other parts of prosthetics, such as a leg or other body parts, but with the hand I feel like I was able to keep the job. But with future research I did want to try, if I had future research I would do other body parts of the prosthetic. And obviously 2 parts I would have liked to dig in more, which I went into earlier, was I wanted to kind of understand and explain more about the nerve control and how the coding goes into it, but since that wasn't needed for my design, just being a CAD, I decided that wasn't necessary. And my conclusion, basically, I find prosthetics are big, important to the future of humanity and medical technology, even though it is hard to kind of compare with physical activity prosthetics. I think it's a good job that it is able to provide an applicable solution to patients.
Okay. After you chose your research question project goal, which information guided your choice of a research method creative process?
Can you say the question one more time?
Sure. After you chose your research question project goal, which information guided your choice of a research method creative process?
So after I decided I wanted to do prosthetics, my first idea was to do CAD design, and I saw because I developed my research question, I saw a source from a girl that made her design her own way, and I was like, I want to try something else like that, and I was really inspired by that source.
Okay, thank you.
Which of the various perspectives you explored was the most difficult for you to incorporate into your research inquiry, and why?
For me, the hardest was the perspective of the computer science aspect and the nerve control aspect. I wasn't ready to dive into that area. It was kind of beyond what I could do with my CAD. I would have liked to go into that area, but since it was a bit out of my experience and I've not kind of learned much about that, and obviously it wasn't going to help with my prosthetic, I decided that I didn't leave that perspective out.
If you had 3 more weeks to work on this research question, what additional research strategies would you put into practice?
Same like I was originally talking about, I'd want to go deeper into another design for another body part, but I would have liked to 3D print this model, and I would have wanted to kind of create a plan with how I wanted to use the coding into it, and how I would have made a plan using the nerve control even.
Okay. Any other questions?